I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me.
Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Carolyn Solo, PhD, LCSW, EMDR consultant, mom of 3 daughters. Welcome to episode 102 of the Future Template Parent Podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about the ins and outs, the good and bad, the ups and downs of launching a program. Basically, I'm going to do a rewind of the last several months of the launches that I've done of the EMDR intensive 12-week intensive group program, and hopefully give you some perspective on what it takes to launch a program, if that's something that interests you. I think I'll go launch by launch. And with each launch, I'll talk about what went well as lessons learned for the next one. So, first of all, what even is a launch? Well, in the world of digital products of all kinds, digital marketing, it's the term that we use to talk about that really intense period of sales where you're actively trying to recruit participants or buyers or clients for that product. It's not something you do 365 days a year, okay? It's a bit of a sprint, around 10 days to 2 weeks usually, when you go really hard and you're doing your darndest to get people to purchase or sign up for or join whatever it is you're selling. You could be launching a group program, one-to-one coaching, a course, an ebook, a webinar, whatever, even therapy intensives. Yep, I said it. And that's how it ties into intensives. Of course, that's the theme of this podcast. So I think throughout all the things that I'm saying are about launching a group coaching program, but there's a lot here that kind of overlaps with thinking about intensives and how you could think about a launch of them. And I'll talk about that more at the end. So why do you do a launch instead of just constantly selling what you're trying to fill? Well, people get bored and exhausted, both the people who are doing the selling and the audience being sold to, right? You know, whether it's Instagram, a podcast, your email list, your blog, whatever your marketing approaches are, you want to be providing interest and value most of the time, okay? With a gentle sales call to action embedded here and there, and going hard on sales just during just a few periods of the year, right? Because one thing that often happens during launches, like for everyone really, is that your audience shrinks a bit, right? Because people think, ew, I don't want to be sold to. That's not why I'm here. And they just unfollow or unsubscribe you or whatever. But that's fine. That's normal and fine, right? It just means that the people who do stick around, and that will still be most of your audience, I promise, are very interested in your message, even when you're actively selling, okay? So that's the idea of a launch. So in the past year, I've launched my signature program. But for the first time in the past year, I've launched it 3 times total in the past year and 3 times total ever. And I'm going to give you the inside scoop on each one. And keep thinking about how this can relate to digital marketing for your intensive, your EMDR intensive. And of course, if you're interested in scaling beyond intensives, this is all also going to apply to if you're interested in adding some sort of digital product to your income portfolio. This will be helpful too. Or any product where you're going to use digital marketing. Certainly it could be in person. You could be doing a coaching intensive with someone in person, right? But the marketing lessons, the digital marketing lessons will still apply. All right, so let's talk launch 1. This was my launch for the September 2024 cohort of the EMDR intensive, 12-week intensive. This was the inaugural cohort of my group. I enrolled 6 therapists in this round of the group. I did a pre-sale in June, which is something people often do. They'll either do a waitlist sale or a pre-sale before the official launch, and enrolled 2 therapists then, and then sold 4 more spots during the launch itself. This was my first ever launch, and so I didn't really know what I was doing, and thank God I had the guidance of my coach. I mean, I wouldn't have done it without her, honestly. What did she help me do? She helped me plan, strategize, write, edit email sequences, plan how to use my Instagram marketing, plan how to use the podcast to promote the group. Every single bit of strategy she had her eyes and her imprint on, and she's a very successful digital marketing therapist in the digital space, as well as a coach. So I knew she knew what she was doing. Even still, I felt sick to my stomach for 2 months straight while I was launching. It was really stressful and hard. I had major imposter syndrome. I hated looking at my ConvertKit statistics because I didn't want to see, was anyone actually clicking on the email links? Did anyone else unsubscribe? The emails felt agonizing to write. I was writing them one day at a time, the day before they had to go live, the day before they had to go out. Trying to sell the program in my Instagram stories felt super awkward and gross, and I felt like I had no idea what I was going to say, and that people must hate it and think it's so awful and blah, 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 blah. I mean, I now know that, honestly, if people aren't interested, they just won't watch it. It's fine. It's not like when someone is selling something in their stories, I'm like, how dare you? You're gross. Unless they are being gross, which, again, very unlikely that's how you operate. But, it was that imposter syndrome. I will say that with Instagram stories, this was so valuable. I used a guide that I had purchased that was a blueprint for how to use Instagram stories for like a 2-week launch of a product. It was tremendously helpful. I followed that guide really, really closely the first time around. I still use it now, although I'll say I don't use it quite as religiously, but I have learned kind of the rhythm and the purpose of it now. So it feels a lot more natural to me now at this point for how to do it. But let me tell you, at the time, I really hated following those prompts. I found showing up in stories to be so awkward. And I don't know if I actually got any direct sales. I was not doing a good job of tracking my metrics back then because it felt scary to even look at them. Now I do a much better job of keeping track of data, like who's clicking on which links, which stories perform well, all that, which emails perform well. But I was too afraid. It felt too vulnerable to look at that data at the time. I eventually did, and I learned a lot. But at the time, I was like, I don't know. But what I did do, even if the Instagram stories were a little clunky, and even if they didn't necessarily result in any sales, I developed and strengthened my muscle for using Instagram stories, which was really important to do, because I use Instagram stories daily now, and they're both to nurture my audience and as an integral part of social media, launching on social media. So that launch, I was already using stories, but that launch got me really comfortable with stories. So I was like, I get how these work. I get why people use them. I know what to do, all that stuff. I think the podcast helped hugely with sales for this first launch. I'd been podcasting for a year by the time I launched, which I think was a very good timeline for launching something like a group. I got some one-to-ones during the first year of the podcast, but the group where I needed to get a core number of people all at the same time, having built up that catalog of authority through a year of the podcast was super, super helpful. I had people that had been listening to me for a while. And so by the time I announced the group, they were primed and ready to go. They're like, oh yes, this is what I want. I'd also been posting regularly on my Future Template Parent Instagram account for about a year when I launched the group. So I had a warm, if smallish, audience. I probably had maybe 800, 900 followers at the time. And then my Instagram account now is closer to 1,500. I have a very niche audience, which actually helps a lot. So my Instagram account is probably never going to get huge. It's EMDR therapists who want to offer intensives. It's not private practice therapists. It's not helping, it's niche. So, and I actually like that because it's manageable. I don't have massive exposure, which is fine and good. But the people who are following me are really interested in my messaging. So, yeah. Right. So, warm but smallish audience on Instagram. My email list was pretty small at this point. I think I had 80 subscribers. That's small. So only 80 people during the launch were getting my emails. And I think I lost about 10 of them during the launch. Like I said, very common to get unsubscribes during the launch. Before that launch, the launch for the September group, September 2024, the only emails my email list ever got was once a week an email about the podcast. So it was a small list, but still. So at that point, when I started selling actively, there were 10 people who were like, no, I know where to find the podcast. So that's enough. Bye. So yeah, I think that might have felt like a little bit of a surprise to some people on the list, and they left, but only 10 of them did. Yeah. So I hadn't been really developing the email list like in a really substantial way. And that was for a while. Honestly, starting an email list had felt scary to me at first. I was like, what would I even say? How do you get people on there? Blah, 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 right? I had a freebie, but I wasn't really promoting. And that was how I was getting people on my email list. That's usually how people do it. They have a freebie that people opt into, and then you get their email address. They get the freebie, you get them on your email list, right? But the freebie, I think I had, it was like guide to offering intensives in your practice, but I did not do a good job of promoting it. You have to promote a freebie too. You don't just have it and hope that people find it. But that felt awkward to me. Stories are a great way to promote a freebie, and I felt weird about that. Um, so, I just wasn't working that funnel well to get people on the email list because you put so much energy and time into writing really substantial launch emails. You want to have people on that list so you're reaping the benefits of that work that you've put into. And people on your email list tend to be much more interested than stay just like your average Instagram follower. So the more people you can get into that group of like, I'm really interested in what you have to say, the better your conversion rate for sales is going to be. What else? I was converting really well on consult calls that I had for the group. Like, so, well over half the people that would book a consult call with me ended up being in the group. So I didn't have a ton of consult calls because I didn't have a huge audience, but like I had the consult calls I did have tended to go very well. So yeah, what all this tells me, looking back on it, is that my messaging was very strong. My niching down was really good. I was very consistent, and I had an audience that had been with me for some time and was ready for this offer. So good job, me. I think if I tried to start it sooner, it would have been too soon. I've heard that first launches can be rough, right? That people maybe try to launch something not having done the groundwork of the audience building and like get one or two people in the group and they still go ahead with it, right? Which is still worthwhile. You get testimonials from those people. You get like, social proof about how the group is helpful. You get experience with how the group goes for the next time. Like that's so worth it. But enrolling 6 people in a first time high ticket group is actually really good. So that was great. I won't go into details about how the group itself went. I want to focus on the launch. But of course, I learned a ton from offering the group too, and I got excellent testimonials to use in future launches, but I also got 6 people. So I think everyone had a really good experience because the group was that size. So pretty great. I was like pretty high off of that experience. So I was gung-ho to launch in January of 2025. I had this thing. I was like, I'm going to launch this group 3 times in 2025. Okay, good goal. I talked about this in podcast episodes at the beginning of the year. It's the beginning of the year. It was a fresh start. The last launch had gone so well. I was so ready to get people enrolled. And I increased the price pretty substantially, feeling confident, too confident maybe, and excited. And then the launch kind of went nowhere. I got one person enrolled and another person who first wanted to enroll, but then decided to do a one-to-one with me instead when she heard the group was going to be small. Rare. So I still got a client. I got 2 clients. I mean, I got something out of it, but it was not what I was hoping for, which was to get, at least 6 people in it again. I would have run the group with 2, but one obviously was not a group, so it was no longer going to be a group. So I talked to the person who had signed up, and she decided instead of doing one-to-one, she decided she'll wait for the June cohort. Great. That was motivating for me. I needed to make that June cohort happen. I already had one person. But I was pretty disappointed with what I viewed at the time as a failed launch, right? I was like, I started to wonder, what have I been doing all this for? Am I delusional? The weekly podcast, the daily reels and Instagram posts, is my email marketing working? Was paying for the support I was paying for actually worth it, right? I had all these fears. Should I just throw in the towel? Was this not a good program, even though I had testimonials telling me it was? Was I too ambitious? Should I just quit? And like, I know everyone like rolls their eyeballs, and I think rolls their eyeballs. And I sure have too, at the adage of like, everyone who's successful has a fail, like behind every success is a failure, whatever, you have to fail to succeed. And it's true. If you stop when things aren't going well, then yeah, you fail. If you fail multiple times over, okay, maybe it's time to stop. If you try a whole bunch of different things and something isn't working, recalibrate whatever. But I had only had one launch that hadn't gone well, and it hadn't gone nowhere. And I think, as I'm about to talk about, there were reasons why it didn't go well, especially now that I've had this very successful launch for this round. I'm able to step back and look at what didn't work then. But at the time, I was like, I failed. Is this a bad idea? And my coach was like, no, this is not a bad idea. You have proof of concept. People like what you're doing. We just have to adjust some things. But let me look back and think about what didn't work about January. I think my heart wasn't really in it. I think the first launch was exhausting. I mean, I know it was. My life was kind of a mess during it. It was the second month after we had moved to Vermont from Pennsylvania. We had traveled a bunch in the summer. My kids had moved. Everyone was a hot mess, myself included. I had no childcare. I had no time. I just scraped through. I was doing everything at the last minute. I was really stressed, and understandably so. I had no systems. I had no support, like in my home. My husband and I were fighting all the time because we were both super stressed. It was not a good time. Like, it's the beginning of the summer now, and I just think back to this time last year, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, sorry for the language. I'm so glad at that a year ago, June, I didn't realize how tough the next few months were going to be. But they were. I knew they were going to be tough, moving my family 4 states away, but they were really tough. And August and September and October were like real low. So, that was exhausting, right? I feel like I had just scraped through. I was like, I worked my butt off during the group itself, September, October, November, because it's a 3-month group. And then, I was recording video lessons every 2 weeks until the last minute, doubling all the time, like doubting all the time that the group was actually going to help, responding to people, worrying that they weren't going to get results. I think deep down I felt like the first launch was a fluke. I think we all have those feelings. I had the classic imposter syndrome response of like, oh, I really pulled a fast one there. Whew, thank goodness I got away with it, So I was tired. I was really tired, but I was like, I'm going to launch again in January. I didn't really update the emails I sent out during the launch a whole lot from the first time. And this is crucial, I had not increased my email list numbers at all for my first launch. In fact, I had lost people because I lost some people during the launch. Like I said, they unsubscribed. So what that meant was that every single person that was on the email list, and there weren't that many of them anyway, had been pitched to during the launch in September. And I likely pulled most of the people who were really interested in during launch 1. The rates of conversion from email lists to programs is something like 1 to 2% for a high ticket item like a course. And if you think back on the September launch, from my email list of 80, I got 6. 2% of 80 is 1.6. So 6 people is much higher than 1.6, right? So I'd likely pulled in all of those ready to buy people from the list and then some. And I didn't grow my email list at all. Big issue, right? And then November 2024, December 2024, January 2025. Not great times for many of us in this country, in this world. Despair, hopelessness, fear, frustration, rage, right? With the current state of the world and of the US in particular. And it's still obviously very much there, right? But I think it was so afresh and so acute from November to January. My energy was really hampered by that. It's very clear it was, because November 2024 was the only month in 2 years of recording the podcast that I skipped 2 episodes. And I even talked about that. I looked back at the episodes. I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm depressed. I don't have anything in me to talk right now. Like, everything feels useless, And I think in January, I skipped 1 episode too. I was like emotionally exhausted. It came through in my pitch, and others were feeling it too, right? They were not in the mood to buy something. I felt that. I didn't feel like I was really selling in a way that I wanted to. So yeah, I wasn't there. And the email list not being bigger was a huge factor. So I was a little delusional, and that's okay. I think delusion is part of how we all move forward sometimes. But I was like, yeah, I got this. I got my 6 people. I'll get my 6 people again. No. And that sucked and I felt awful about it. But obviously, I did not give up. So let me move on to this launch to tell you exactly what I did do. So this launch, I was scared, to be completely honest. I thought, what if it's January all over again? What if, September 2024 really was a fluke? And I had promised the one person who enrolled in January that June was going to happen. I had to hustle to do that. And that was very motivating, honestly. So I'm glad that that was the case. I wonder what I would have done if I hadn't had that person that I was like, I must make this group happen for this person. But during the non-launch of January debrief with my coach, I really had to come to terms with how big of an issue this small email list was. I was doing so much of my launching promotion there, all those emails, right? Of course, buffeted by the podcast and Instagram, but most of the energy during launch went to emails. And like I've said, those are your warmest lead. Those are the people who are really interested in what you're saying if they're on your email list. So I had to grow that list. And of course, there was this part of me that was like, what if no one's interested? What if you can't grow that list? So I needed to do something not drastic, but significantly different. My coach presented the idea of giving a very high value freebie, something that I felt like was worth a lot, that people would really want, that had real, good sink your teeth into it content, and give that away for free. And so I settled on my client EMDR Intensives client workbook, because it basically is, a lot of you know what the workbook is already, but it's this 22-page document where it has all these assessments. It has treatment planning. It has resourcing in it. It has parts work. It's all the stuff that you have the client do before the first day of the intensive, so they're really primed to do really good work. And it also has a kind of between the intensive section and then a follow-up section. It's a very, very complete document, and my clients love it. It's really useful. And I know other programs talk about workbooks and stuff, so the idea for people was out there, but then the thought of how do I come up with my own is a lot, right? So I decided that's what I should give away. And I'd actually sold it to some people for $79 at some point. And I was like, no, I'm going to give it away. And my coach was like, think about what you're getting for this. And I was like, right, okay, I need this exposure. People, I'm going to get maybe 10 people to buy it, the workbook for $79, but what if I get a full group out of it? Obviously giving it away to many more people are going to take it if it's free, right? And I'm going to get them on my email list. So it is worth it. But it was hard because I had attached this financial, monetary value to it. But I was like, I know people want this. And I know if it's free, they're really going to want it. So we decided to do it. And then I had to be encouraged to promote it a lot more aggressively than I had been. Not just in Instagram stories, which was where I was promoting it to people who were already following me and stuff, but maybe, a percentage of your followers follow your stories, whatever. I would get some people through there, but a lot of those people were already on my email list or whatever. So I needed to pull in new people, basically. And so my coach was like, what about therapist Facebook groups? And I was like, oh, but you're not supposed to promote on there. And I hate that. She's like, what if we just tried one and see what happens? So I found one that I posted it on. It got taken down in 3 hours because it went against the rules of promotion. Because a lot of these therapist Facebook groups, they're run by another business. So they're trying to promote their business, right? So they don't want you being like, here's this free thing to work with me, But in those 3 hours, it got 20 people, and I was like, oh, I'm onto something here. So I found a few other Facebook groups to post to. And some declined the post before it even got up because they are like, no, this goes against our rules. Some people wouldn't, had very, very strict rules about promotion. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to screw with this too much. I did post it in I managed to get on a couple Facebook groups, a couple that were EMDR specific. And I got a ton of people. I got a lot. I got to 360 subscribers from whatever I had after the first launch, I don't know, 70 or something. So I grew by 290. Still not a gigantic email list, but way, way bigger. 290 new people who could hear my messaging for the first time. And again, if we're thinking percentages, getting, the percentage of people I got from that email list is about that 2% mark, right? My group has 7 people in it and 360, it's about 2%. So I got that conversion rate. Conversion on track with what's expected. And it never would have happened if I hadn't aggressively gotten more freebie subscribers. It felt awkward to post on those Facebook groups. Like, I had 1,000 reasons why I thought it would be like cringy and people would be mad about it. And a couple people were mad about it and people took the post down and stuff, but it still worked. And I'm pretty sure that none of those people are thinking about me right now, 2 months later, or 3 months later. It's just how business is done. I wasn't forcing anyone to buy something. And someone was like, well, if I download this, then I have to give you my email list. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I didn't even respond, but the answer is, of course. But you can also unsubscribe. They're like, it's not free because I have to give you my email address. Okay, then don't get it. Like, I mean, okay. So, but that was a couple of people. And obviously many, many people thought it was worth downloading, right? So it was a several month process too, getting that freebie out there. I think in February we decided to start using that as the freebie once we did the the kind of post-launch post-mortem, and we're like, we need to up this. So I had to get it looking good, kind of really edit it some, make it look beautiful, because it was kind of like just like a Google Doc that I used but didn't look great. I wanted to make it looking really professional. I had to get it in my Stan store. I had to have sort of an email sequence that went with it. I had to make sure the subscribers were really easily and quickly added to my email list, make it so I didn't have to think about it once it was up there. We also decided to add a second email every week that was a bit more value focused to my email list now that I had grown, instead of just having the podcast email, which I kept because I think it's important. But I wanted to warm up these new subscribers so they knew about more than just the podcast. I wanted to make the email list feel like it was something that was worth staying on now that they'd gotten the freebie. But I didn't overload with emails. Like, it was 2 emails a week, and one of them was the podcast, and one of them was just like, here's a thought about intensives, and a little bit of talking about my free webinar, which was the first day of the launch, which I have some episodes about that you can listen to. I think free webinars are actually a great thing to offer. And I think that did help me a lot in this launch. I know there are 2 people who were on the webinar live who actually joined. So that was huge, but they were also on my email list. That's how they got those emails. But yeah, I think webinars are great. Really, really helpful if you're trying to get people to work with you. But yeah, I didn't want to overload them with emails until mid-May when I was launching, right? But an extra email a week was like nurturing them. Another big piece was getting ahead on having those launch emails written and updating everything so it felt a little new and fresh. Not the same emails I sent in August and January or December. Even though the vast majority of everybody on the list had not seen the first set of emails for the first 2 launches, I wanted for myself to kind of refresh it and make it feel like new. So I wanted it to feel new for me. And yes, there were still 65 people, maybe 70, I forget, 70 on the list who had been there for the first 2 launches. So it did need to feel a little fresh for them also. But I made sure all of those emails were done by the beginning of May, right? And the first one didn't go out till May 19th. All of them. No writing at the last minute, bugging my poor coach to read something the day before, bugging my marketing manager to get them scheduled in Kit the morning of. No. And I planned out what I was going to talk about in my reels. None of that like, oh shit moments, because I didn't need to do that again. And I didn't want to do that again. I had done enough groundwork and experienced launches twice now that I didn't have to do it that way. But I also knew I really couldn't do it that way if this was going to be successful. I even planned out my stories a bit in advance on Instagram. So all this is good stuff that I did, right? What about the bad and the ugly, right? Well, how about my kid breaking my phone halfway through the launch? My phone where I access Instagram and film reels and stories and DM people and answer questions and do consult calls and update stuff in Google Drive and text and Slack my team. Yeah. With 5 days left in the launch, my phone broke. It was not good. I was trying to do everything on my I couldn't even record reels. I was trying to respond to things on my computer. Like, no, I missed an email or two. I missed a lot of Instagram presents. But something else I've learned is there's no such thing as a perfect launch. And this was a much better launch than the other two in terms of getting stuff done and doing it right. So it worked, but it wasn't perfect. And maybe my next one, I'll finally get most of the pieces together. It won't be perfect, but I'm just aiming for a little bit easier and better every time. And one final thing, right? I had done tons of prep over months for this launch, like the slow burn build and also like just getting stuff ready. And that paid off hugely. And one final thing I'll say, I lost maybe 30 subscribers during the launch from 360 or whatever. That's a substantial number. But, so many subscribers had subscribed because they wanted my freebie and probably had no idea about anything else that I was doing. And so some of them got what they wanted and then started getting a bunch of sales emails. And I'm like, no, I'm out of here. But I still have 330 who are on the email list after 2 weeks of daily sales emails. They're interested enough in what I'm saying to not unsubscribe. And they didn't even know when they downloaded my guide about this group program, about any of that stuff, right? So there's interest. They like what I'm doing and like what I'm saying. And it takes a long time to nurture people to be ready to buy a high ticket item. Not everybody. Some people are like, this is it. This is what I want. I'm in. For some people, it can take 2 years, right? So I think some of them will turn into customers at some point. Maybe the next launch, which will be in September. Who knows? But it's that slow burn and it's that commitment and it's the long game. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that really came out for me for this launch was like, oh yeah, I'm committed to the long game now. I made it through January, which kind of sucked. And then I did this launch and realized, if I put in the work, if I make sure all the pieces, the groundwork is there, building the email list, having the consistency, doing things in advance, having a strategy mapped out, it is going to work. It's a lot of work. And it means getting uncomfortable, as I always talk about, being consistent, showing up. It's a lot of work and it can feel really, really uncomfortable, but it does work. So, and that's the lesson I will keep returning to when I need to, because we all doubt at times, right? So finally, how do I tie this into you and your EMDR intensives? Well, I think it's a good idea to think about doing launches of your intensive as well, right? Like using a launch format to really build interest about your intensives. If as you build your presence with digital marketing, and I really think you should, if you offer intensives, like you need to be out there and just, more than one way. I mean, if your in-person networking works perfectly, yes, you can fill your practice that way. But a digital marketing will supplement and bolster that in so many ways. So I think you should have a digital marketing presence of some kind. And you can build an email list, right? You can construct a freebie. You can sell intensives more aggressively in your stories. You can sell for a good 10 days in one of those ways and see what happens before you take a break and let everybody breathe. That's so important. Email lists need breaks between launches. Your Instagram account needs breaks between launches. You'll lose people constantly if all you're ever doing is launching, and like the intensity people won't feel any kind of urgency, which we know is important with sales, even something about learning more about an intensive, right? You need to be providing value in between hard sells. That your entire platform campaign cannot be hard selling. Like it really can't. And if you want to talk in more detail about how to do this kinds of thing, how to do that nurturing, and then how to do the launching versus the nurturing, all that, I would love to work with you on that. In a variety of different ways we could do that. What if you use this summer to solidify a strategy like this as you think about how to launch intensives for you? I think there are so many good ways you can do it. I see people doing it in really cool ways. And I think a lot of the same principles that I've been talking about for this group program apply for intensives as well, right? We can talk Instagram lives together. We can talk freebies. We can talk masterclasses. We can talk webinars. If you want to have a free chat about how we could work together and I could support you in building this intensive launch, or if you're also interested in just launching something else, I'm happy to talk to you. My Calendly link to schedule a free 30-minute call is in the show notes. That's a great way for us to connect and see if like there's any way that I could be of service to you. So thank you for joining me for episode 102, giving you a bit of a behind the scenes of what launching has looked like in the past year for me. This was a little vulnerable in places. I was talking failure as well as success. But as I said, failure, we don't give up when failures happen. We can come out on the other side, right? We learn from failures, and as long as we put those lessons to use, they lead to something good. I hope this was interesting and valuable for you. And like I said, if you want to chat more about this, set up a free 30-minute call with me, and I'd love to talk about how this could serve you. And I will talk to you next week, friends. Thanks as always for listening.